This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. I'm doing great, considering. You're going to remember from last week, I just had Hurricane Idalia sweep north of me. It didn't hit. It was okay. But where I live, there's a lot of large oaks, a lot of large trees. I live out in the sticks, so a lot of the utilities are above ground. My point being that we just get a lot of the strong winds and you get branches down. Bottom line, for those of you who listened to me last week, you know that I was running on generator power. Guess what? I'm on generator power again today. Beautiful weather, no storm, no rain, no winds. And all of a sudden, like maybe 3 or 4 hours ago, my lights flickered. And my generator will just spring automatically. It'll turn on. And I was like, what? And I waited a minute because I thought, okay, maybe this is like a hiccup. No, it's still, let me see, 3 hours later. So thank God for the generator. Like I told you, when I got it, it was like, man, this is a big expense. But moments like this, it was the best buy I ever did. And again, I have this is, as everybody from last week knows, this is my enforcer. Okay, I split up my gang, my pack. Some of them are on the porch, but I got a couple here, so that when they start barking too much, people know that I spray them. And you see why it has a tape on it? Because of my last baby, who's still puppy, and I'm telling you, I'm ready. Sometimes I look at her and she looks at me like, "You're not going to hit me, right?" And I'm like, "No, I can't." But yes, I've got the enforcer with me again. And for those of you back there, you remember last week I was saying how I was all upset, not upset, but it was like, I'm going into all these stores and they've got Halloween stuff up. And it's like, come on, guys, since August, Halloween is not till October. As a matter of fact, right now it's about 54 days away. And they still had I'm not talking about a couple. Every place I go, there's got a bunch of Halloween stuff. So I said, okay, all right, I'm going to start bringing out my Halloween stuff. I'll turn this off because it gives you the effect like you're in a disco or something. But check this out. Oh, wait a minute. This thing has got, and now it won't do that for me. I feel so foolish. Anyway, electric. I love this crap. Okay. Anyway, yeah. I'm not going to keep the electric thing going because, anyway, yeah, it's got the electrics, and I'm starting to bring out all my Halloween stuff. Which let me tell you something. It's really something odd because it's still hot. It's still very hot here. All right, but it's like, okay, I love Halloween, but how's this? I like the anticipation of Halloween, but not 2 months before. How's that? Besides that, everything is good here. Like I said, we did well in North Florida with Hurricane Idalia. It skirted above us and kept going on its way. And there's a couple of other things churning out there in the Atlantic, which is fine by me because they're not coming over here. And since I grew up in South Florida, I'm used to this stuff. So there you go. So like I said, that generator, life is so sweet with that. But anyway, let's go on to the good stuff. The good stuff is who the guests are. And I've got 2 of them, 2 for the price of 1. This is the first time these gentlemen come to Stories of the Supernatural. and their names are Ash Ellis and Greg Thomlinson. Let me tell you a little bit about Ash. He's a UFO sight. He had a UFO sighting at the age of 10. He's out of Manchester, UK, and he has spent a lifetime trying to figure out what he saw, ultimately leading to his founding of UFOidentified.co.uk and the UK's biggest database of current day UFO sightings. After a ghostly encounter in a pub in 2018, this interest spread to other areas of the paranormal, and Ash now has a keen interest in anything considered out of the ordinary and investigates both UFO sightings and other paranormal reports, even including alleged Bigfoot sightings in the UK. And we're going to ask him all about that. And for Greg, he grew up in the 80s watching programs like Tomorrow's World and especially Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, where he learned about high strangeness and the paranormal. It was on this program that Greg first heard about poltergeists and spontaneous human combustion, which started his fascination in everything weird. After joining a local paranormal research group near Oxford, he has now dedicated many years to understanding things that are considered out of the ordinary. They have a weekly podcast, I believe, where they go into all the different areas of the paranormal as far as the UFOs, cryptozoology, strange occurrences. We'll talk about that later. And of course, we're going to give you the website and everything for both the video and the podcast viewers. Help me welcome them. How are you doing today, Ash and Greg?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Very well. Thanks for having us on, Marlene.
Oh,
Yes.
my pleasure. Okay, so I got a little bit of the bio as far as did you have any really early childhood experiences that looking back now you realize, hey, that was maybe paranormal?
Yeah, so I used to stay at a friend's house. Like my mum used to work in the mornings and my friend's mum used to work in the afternoons. So during the school holidays, like we'd be at each other's houses. And like I'd
Right.
be there in the afternoon, he'd be there in mine in the morning. So
Okay.
one of their parents. And one day I remember I had to stay over at his house. Like overnight, we used to crash over. So we used to stay in the same bed. We were only like 5 or 6. And he woke up the next morning and told his mum that he'd seen a man at the end of the bed, which obviously freaked me out somewhat. And they had a priest come in and bless the house. And it was a fairly newish house.
Okay.
In the little town where I used to live. And it wasn't really till a little bit later on that's when like the Arthur C. Clarke stuff coming in the 80s. So I grew up mainly in the 80s. And it was a weird sort of time before X-Files, before the internet. Right. So you didn't really have any frame of reference as to what any of this was unless you read it in a book or saw it on TV.
Let me tell you something. They went real quick to blessing or exorcism. So I wonder if they might have had prior stuff that you never knew about, because it was like
maybe
not a little kid with a bad dream. It's like
exactly.
Get somebody in here to bless this place.
I never liked going upstairs in that house. I remember afterwards I was just like, oh, it used to frighten me. I was only
You know
little.
what? I think that's so interesting because I've run across so many people that say, you know what, this structure, this house, this apartment, whatever, is new or not old, in other words, which is what you always think of as a spooky place with maybe a bad history.
Yeah.
And there you go. But sometimes it's what was there before, or just the land itself. Something happened there.
Absolutely. So that was sort of an early one. I don't really think I've talked about that much before. So that might be new to Ash, to be fair.
Yeah, the first time I've heard that.
How about you, Ash? Did you ever have any childhood? And the reason why I ask is sometimes children are so open that when they have the experience, sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't get it till you're a little bit older and you think back and you go, hey, you know what? That was weird. Wait a minute. Did you ever have childhood experiences?
No, not that I am aware of. Only the one that you mentioned in the opening, saw a UFO when I was 10. And apart from the ghost incident about 5 years ago, nothing really. So it's probably 20 years between the two. There's nothing I can really
that you could say this is definitely.
Yeah.
Let me ask you that UFO sighting. Well, how did that happen? How did that occur?
So it was when the Hale-Bopp comet was visible in the UK in 1997. And it's just a clear day. So there's a number of kids, a couple of adults just out in the street, just looking at the comet. And all of a sudden, a typical black triangle craft just appeared, one like white light in each corner, and it's about the size of a 50p in the sky, and it just travelled from one part of the sky near the comet, just all the way across, and then disappeared. And you could see it wasn't like it was three separate lights; it was three lights in an apparent craft. And even the adults were like, "That's not a plane. We don't know what that is." And then that was it. Really lasted less than 60 seconds, and then everybody else just went back to looking at the comet, playing football in the street or whatever they were doing. I was the only one that kind of thought, "Hang on, what was that? Why is no one like trying to figure out what that was?" And then that kind of kicked off. I was only 10 years old, and that kicked off basically a lifetime of interest in trying to find out what it was that I saw.
Let me ask you if I'm correct, and I'm gonna. It's the Haley Bob. If that's the one, isn't that the one over here in the U.S. and California where they had that sect where they committed suicide and the men? I'm almost positive that's it. That's the one.
That was the Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate. There we go. Heaven's Gate. That unfortunately, besides killing themselves, I believe some of the men had castrated themselves. This is very unusual people, and I'm being very gracious about that. But yeah. But I have heard of other people having sightings around the time that comet was supposed to come by. That's very interesting.
I went a few years ago. I went to there's some place called Centre Parks in the UK. It's like a holiday sort of camp kind of place.
Okay.
It's quite a in school holidays they rip you off. It's so expensive. But anyway, where our sort of chalet was in the woods, there was a little like bus station. They had a little bus and train that went round the whole park, and it was called Heaven's Gate. And I was like, oh my god, that's probably the worst named train station.
It's how can I say it's so innocuous when you think about it, but then and you understand, what was that was tied to as far as the.
I know.
That
I was
group.
just like, oh my god.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I remember that. I hate to say that poor comet. At least for the people that were old enough, it kind of got like that connection was like what I just thought of. Hey, those are the weird people that like did away with themselves.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other show about cults and stuff like
dark.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I have read that there has been other groups of similar cults that even that have the same what's the thing, the same way of reasoning or their belief system. And but I believe sometimes the authorities have found out and they've stopped them from doing one of those mass suicide things. So here we are, we fast forward, and you know what, and I was going to ask you because I used to, when I was in Miami, I used to belong to a UFO, like a MUFON group. And you know how after the meeting they would do presentations, but then people talk, and a couple of people asked me, or we would talk about that they had, like you said, not even an extraterrestrial encounter. They had seen like the UFO, and then for some reason they started having paranormal experiences in their house, and they were asking me, since I've been doing paranormal research since the 90s, Marlene, have you ever heard of this? Like a time, like you usually think paranormal and UFO as two different things. And they were saying, look, ever since I saw this sighting, I started having weird stuff happen in my house. Have you come across that, or did that ever happen to you now that you look in hindsight?
It's not happened to me. However, upon doing the podcast for the past 3 years, we've spoken to many people that it has happened to. And it's mainly been, I think we found it's been the other way around, where they've had kind of poltergeist activity or things happening as a child, and then as they become an adult, they start to become abducted or seeing these strange things in the sky. And then they kind of, when they then look back, they then realised, actually, was this all connected? Is it me? Is it the house? And we have spoke to many people that they basically experience all kind of aspects. But that's sort of been the other way around, where it's sort of the ghost experiences first, or more spirit based, and then UFO related sort of later on in life. Greg, is that about?
Yeah, I'd say that seems to be the way with the people we've spoke to. Yeah, that
right. And I know that once upon a time it was like you had people that were believers in UFOs, but the paranormal was way on out here, and and then they found even UFO sightings with cryptid sightings of also. There's sometimes there's a
Absolutely.
jump for people that track it.
So we've when we first got into doing a podcast, we were very much like, we got the paranormal episodes, we've got the UFO episodes, we do the cryptid episodes, and then as we're going along, the guests that we spoke to would be like, well, I've had the paranormal experience, I've also had the UFO experience, and then you'd have the UFO experience and the cryptid experiences,
Yes.
and then there'd be sort of all three. So we've kind of got to a point over the last few years that it's all just one thing, and people
Yes.
experience different parts of the one thing or multiple parts of the one thing at some point or at different points in their life. So it's been we also find that some people will have one experience and that's it, say like Ash, that'll be it. And then we will speak to the next person and they've had it on and off throughout their life. So some people have loads, some people have one, and some people really have nothing. It's very strange how it affects different individuals, but in massively different ways.
Yeah, well, I've interviewed a couple of times a gentleman by the name of Stan Gordon. He's out in Pennsylvania. And originally he was an investigator. I feel it was for MUFON. In other words, bottom line, he's been tracking reports of UFOs since the 1970s. In other words, he has a very many years of trackings. And we've talked about how he realized where all of a sudden they were spikes in UFO sightings and spikes in cryptid sightings in that neck of the woods where he's at in Pennsylvania. Because originally, like I said, he was not a cryptid guy. He was not looking for that. He was strictly UFO sightings. But, people will call in and say, I saw this or I saw that. And then all of a sudden he found a correlation between both things. And you're thinking, okay, is there something there? Isn't there something there? You always, I don't know if you've heard of the theory that some people think that some of these UFOs are coming through either rifts or portals that are interdimensional. Maybe some of these cryptids are coming in and out at the same time. I don't know if you guys run across any stories like that of anybody witnessing a portal or something along those lines.
Yeah, we spoke to witnesses that have been in their bedroom and then basically little trolls, I guess is a way to describe them, had just appeared, like basically seems like a hole in basically in the air, and then these were then in their suddenly in their room, these little troll creatures. And with regards to Bigfoot and UFOs, that's something where you wouldn't put them two things together. You think,
yes,
a light in the sky and a big bear in the woods, how are them two kind of related? But then in doing our research, it's very, very correlated. And like I say, especially in the US, like there's tales going back to Native American times where there's been tales where they've seen what they described as apes coming out of the moon, like being dropped off by the moon. And I guess if there was a ship in the sky, that might be how they would describe it, because they haven't got any reference to call it a plane or anything. That's
or what if the ship is cloaked, or one of those things. Like you remember from the movie Predator where the creature would blend into the surroundings. It was there, it was just invisible. Maybe that's what it is. It's a cloaked ship, and all you see is this creature like dropping down out of what, thin air, maybe, or maybe if you have the moon behind. I don't know. That's really interesting.
It could have been, but like I said, the interesting way they described it was they came out of the moon, like the moon dropped these ape creatures off. And there was another one, I think it was 1950s. Can't remember where in America it was, but a mum and the daughter had seen a Bigfoot type creature run into the woods, and then a couple of minutes later, two lights came out of the woods and then sort of disappeared off into the sky. So again, are they the pilots? Is that?
Hey, you're right. Came by for you.
But it's not something like I say, not something you'd usually put together. But the more we research, the more you think actually,
what
is it all related?
Recently, that India and Japan and Russia, they've been going to the moon in these past couple of weeks. They landed non-manned, and so I've been reading all this other stuff about the moon and everything, and I'm reading some stuff about people saying the moon is a ship. I was like, okay, and I'm one of these people, I always keep an open mind. Some of the times I go, wow, but I always try to keep an open mind about some things, even if they're really wild. And that one about that the moon is not really a satellite, as in a piece of rock, that it's actually a ship. And then you're telling me that, and I'm like, well, there you go. But
I read a book about the moon being man-made. So
yes,
it's actually a
also,
man-made
yes,
structure, and only when we're sufficiently advanced enough in terms of our intelligence will we understand the reason why we, like past selves, built the moon.
right.
And it's a message. And I, again, like yourself, is some of the accounts we listen to on the podcast, and we talk to people, and we're like, how
I
can
know.
this be something you've experienced?
Right.
And we speak to them on camera like we are now, and they're very sincere. There's no
Yes.
laughing, there's no joking, they're deadly serious. Some people that we spoke to almost look haunted by the
Yes.
abductions they're having.
Yes.
Well, on our podcast, we don't make a judgment on the podcast. We just, like yourself, we just
Right.
have a
Right.
conversation, and it's all cool. And then afterwards, we'll have a little debrief, me and Ash, and we'll be like, even if only 1% of that story that person's told us is true,
hmm
the whole thing's insane. Like this
Yes, of course,
experience.
like and I think that's what scares people sometimes, that the ones that are like kind of very rigid, because if any of these things prove even kind of true, it makes everything else look
Mhm.
okay. If that's
Mm.
true, then what else
Yeah,
that in my world doesn't exist or is made up or that's a fairy tale? What if
yeah,
some of those things are real? And
yeah.
I think that's why a lot of people are like, no, 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 paranormal. You guys forget it. You're all crazy, because they're afraid of, hey, I want to go into the movie theater, see this, or well, nowadays you can stream it, but that's as far as I want it. The credits
Yeah.
roll, and then I go back to real life when none of this stuff can happen.
Mhm.
And like you said, that some people are haunted. I'm going to make this. I was a practicing hypnotherapist for many years, and I had a few people throughout the years contact me in order to forget. They wanted to
Wow.
erase from their memory certain things that they had seen, because they just were having a terrible time after they had witnessed certain things
Mhm.
about living life. How's that? They
Yeah.
they were having a hard they developed anxiety, they had a hard time sleeping.
Mhm.
In some cases, some of them after nightfall would not go outside. Their world totally, and they contact me, throughout the years, like, can you make me forget? And I mean, I worked with them on different things, but yes, I understand what you're saying as far as
Yeah.
that. For some people, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the personality of, like, I can't exist in a world where this is possible.
Yeah. And we've got to the point now that we'll take anybody's experience, we'll listen to what they say, we'll ask the questions
Right.
that sort of come up through natural conversation. We just put it out there, and if people believe it, they believe it. If they
Right,
don't, they
exactly.
don't. But one of the things we say is that unless we've been in that person's shoes, like
Sure.
anybody, unless you've been in that person's shoes, who are you to say whether or not that experience was real? To that
Mhm.
person, it certainly, the majority of what they're saying, they believe it. So
Yes.
whether they want to believe it is another matter. But the fact that they believe it when they're saying it to us, and sometimes they're saying it to us for the first time, they're the first time
Yes.
they've ever spoken to anybody about it.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it's a privilege anyway for us. But yeah, we get feedback from people saying that guy's or that woman's experience was like insane, and
Mhm.
like we have conversations around the fact that we've spoken to a guy a couple of times, and he's the guy that's been haunted by his experiences. We spoke to him a couple of times. He's just released a book about all of his stuff, and yeah, it's you're just like, I don't know how you would process a lot of it, and that's the thing.
Right.
How do you even process this fantastical experience? And
Right.
I mean that in not necessarily a good way,
Right, exactly. So
but
some
how
people
do you
say
process?
they look at I'm gonna go with a psychic, the psychic or medium, somebody that
Mhm.
can sees the dead people or whatever. And some people think, oh my God, that's so interesting. I'm thinking, stop and think about it. Sometimes having that ability can make life very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult. Because you're seeing something. I don't think, how's this? I don't think we're really meant to see it like 24/7, because I think it would totally make us like we couldn't operate in the real world if you would be going down the street and you would be seeing maybe somebody that got run over down the corner. I don't,
Mhm.
or maybe some of whether it's our nature or conditioning by society. But I think eventually, if we were full blown having that ability, we would end up in an insane asylum, because I don't think we could just grasp it day to day. I think it's good that we do it little by little. Like, okay, let's see what this is about,
Definitely.
because well, and then again, you also have some people that they're lying, or they're hoaxing, or they've got mental illness, and
Mhm.
you got to throw that in there. Um, when you did either of you ever go out and do paranormal research in the field?
Yeah, we've been out a few times, me and Ash. We've been fortunate enough to interview some top paranormal investigators in the UK. One of which does a lot of work at a particular hotel in the UK,
Hmm.
where I don't know how many hours worth of live camera footage is it a
It's
week,
like
Ash?
7,000 hours or
Oh
something.
my God,
Yeah, it's
that's a
24
lot.
hours a day recording.
Oh, because they've
Uh,
got a
cameras
camera rolling
everywhere.
all the time.
Like
In
26 or 30 cameras running
Oh my
24
God.
hours a
Okay,
day.
I take it then this is a very active place.
extremely.
Okay.
So we were fortunate enough to go up there a number of weeks ago, and yeah, we done a lot of investigating, spent all evening and through the night investigating different aspects and areas of the hotel.
Okay.
And it was insane,
How
really.
old is the hotel?
400 odd
Oh,
years
okay.
old.
All
Yeah,
right.
we're quite fortunate in the UK that a
Oh, I
lot
was
of
gonna
our
say, yeah. I mean, you
yeah
get something that's, and I
yeah
know that in some cases, a lot of these structures, they even have earlier stuff that was there, and they just, build on
mhm,
top of earlier
yeah
stuff. And
yeah
especially
where I
inns
am
and
in the
taverns and hotels, I imagine, from
yeah.
what I understand, they're there from forever.
So I've been to Oxford Castle just in terms of age,
Okay.
just down the road from me, and it's been a site of part of Oxford University for a
All right.
1,000 years. And
Yeah,
it's just we're in
you
the crypt.
definitely got to have
That
some
is.
type of activity there. I mean, there's just no way to. All right, you guys,
Mhm.
take it easy. All right, I'm gonna hold on. Let me use the enforcer.
Oh
Hold on.
yeah, you
Hey,
crack
you
on.
guys. My audience knows I have a bunch of little dogs, and the one barks and the other ones bark just because the first one barked, that kind of thing. But yeah, you know what? Let me ask you, and this is the thing. Sometimes I wonder about some of these really, really, really old structures. That it's how much of this is intelligent hauntings versus residual. Something that was repetitive. That there really isn't any what's soul or ghost. It's just something that was done so many times. Like you hear people going up and down the steps or the stairs, and it's like, so that's one of the things you have to be careful with. Or one of these really large places, like how do you cover that?
Mhm. So what? Explain what happened to us, Ash, in one of the rooms in room 5.
So when we were at the hotel, which is the Ye Old King's Head in Chester, which
Mm-hmm.
is an old city itself, a famous Roman city, which is why it goes back so many years. But
Okay.
we were getting clear, intelligent responses.
Really?
We were in one of the rooms, and we'd asked for it, like we just typically calling out, asking, "Can you make a noise? Can you tap on the wall to let us know you're here?"
Okay.
And then there's a tap on the wall. So it's like, okay, that could be anything. If that was you, can you do it again?
Okay.
Immediate response. Just to make sure that is you responding to us. Can you tap twice on the wall?
That's
We're
intelligent.
like, okay, cool. Right, thank you. That's amazing. And then all of a sudden, to my left was the door to the room, and clear as day, two loud, proper knocks on the door to the room we were in, loud as day. And what's good about this hotel is to have a control room where the guys that run the hotel and work there, they're monitoring all the cameras. So there's guests in different rooms and parts of the hotel, and they're monitoring all the cameras. And we have radios. So
Mm-hmm.
he's radioed the control room and said, just had these knocks. Someone just knocked on the door. Can you check the cameras? Was anybody in the corridor? Was anybody in the room next to us? Can you just try and rule out anybody else making
Right.
this noise? So he's like, okay, give me a couple of minutes. 5 minutes later, he comes up with his phone, shows us the footage. We're in the room. He's got the camera showing outside of the corridor. Nobody's in the corridor. Nobody's in the room next to us. And clear as day on the camera, he just on our door. And there's
Let
just
me ask you:
nobody.
was room 5 noted for being haunted, or was it just happened to be your room? Okay. What's
Yeah,
up with room 5?
It's one of the most active rooms in the
Okay.
hotel. There's a number of rooms, and yeah, you essentially, it's got a pub and like restaurant at the bottom that
Okay.
closes throughout the evening, and then like on the second floor,
Mhm.
you'd have the rooms. No, so
There's like a breakout room.
second floor is like a bar, and the third floor is the rooms, and you get to experience the second and third floor throughout the investigations, and like on a normal public paranormal investigation.
Is there like is there a certain spirit that's the suspect of that room in particular, or do they have several ones?
I think it's pretty well loads of them, because we were in the different rooms,
Okay.
and experienced something in most of the rooms. Yeah, it was. We've got footage of a massive, it's about 20 foot, 7 meter long table, massive oak table, being banged from underneath. With
Really?
Ash's camera
What?
was on one end of the table. I was on the opposite end, and I didn't even feel the table move or hear it. But Ash and our friend, who were either side, they were like,
Mhm.
"Did you just feel the table move?" I was like,
You know how
"No."
much kinetic energy it takes to
Yeah,
manifest that way? That's a
and
lot.
you can see it on the camera. It's like it's been whacked from underneath.
Yeah, from
and
underneath.
The camera moves, and it's
So
insane, the footage
has
we got.
anybody had an actual sighting, or is it just auditory?
Yep. No, loads of sightings there, all captured on camera. They've had like a typical kind of white ghost.
Okay.
It's on night vision, but go past one of the windows. I'll have to
Alright.
send you. I'll send you the
Yeah.
clips. They are fantastic. And
But the most compelling one for me was just one in the corridor where it looks like a full body apparition shadow in the corridor, but it walks like sideways across the corridor, as if like from one wall into the wall
Yes.
opposite. And they did a lot of, because when they see something, they try and figure out what it is. And so they show the camera footage, and there's no body around there, so nobody that's walked past that's caused the shadow. It's the middle of the night. There's nobody around. And then when they've done research into the hotel, where that wall is that this apparition walked into, which you see clear day on the camera, that wasn't always a wall. It used to be open. So it's like something has walked, like where the wall wasn't there.
That's the part I love.
Into it. And yeah, the amount of footage they've got of that place.
I love those sightings where people say, and then they research and they find out, that stair wasn't there, that there was a door there, that there isn't a door. And it's like, you can't make that up, because this spirit is existing in a place that doesn't exist anymore. But for them, that door, that window, or that balcony was there.
Yeah.
And that to me gives it a lot more credibility when somebody has a sighting. Or you've heard of people that will say, well, I saw the spirit or the ghost or whatever, like from the knees, but really it's not the knees up, it's that they were walking at a lower level of what used to be there. And or things like that. So it's almost like, if you want to say, like, I don't want to say like a parallel universe kind of deal, where that time period and this time period kind of mesh one over the other.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
So we've been super fortunate enough to sort of go there. It's a very popular place at the moment, and we seem to speak about this particular hotel all the time because we had such a good time there. And we've been to other places, and I've been to other places, and you go, could have could have been something. Nothing really
Right.
happened. And I get that with paranormal investigations, a lot of the time nothing happens. It's
Mhm.
just the nature of it. But this particular place, it's active a lot of the time.
Yes.
It's it's
For some reason, prisons, hotels, and hospitals.
yep.
Hospitals
Oh,
for obvious
100%.
reasons.
Hmm.
Prisons, well, of course, but hotels, you hear about a lot of people going at hotels. You always think of a hotel as a place to have a good time, but there was once upon a time where people actually lived at the hotels, or things were going on in their life um, where there's it's high emotional as to why maybe a spirit would be stuck there. You would think, what is it doing in the hotel? But sometimes there's a big emotional tie for that person while they were alive for some reason.
Yeah, and things were a lot different. Like with this hotel, it's 400 years old.
Oh yeah, of
A lot of
course.
the pubs like used to be inns, and so like they've now
Yes.
turned into hotels. And like this room where the table was used to be the brothel,
Mm-hmm.
and the prostitutes that were killed there like 200 years ago and stuff like that. So like I
Okay.
said, times were a lot different back then, where
Oh
people
sure.
would be executed and
Oh
just
yeah. It's like,
killed
oh yeah,
like
step out and the
family.
gallows is out there in the corner.
Yeah, yeah.
That kind of
100%.
deal.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
The niceties that we think of today weren't around.
No.
weren't so civil back then.
No.
We've just started. We do like a mini series each week,
Okay.
and we've started at the top of the UK in Scotland and working our way
Okay.
down to Cornwall and Land's End down in England, and we are making our way around different pubs and inns and hotels all the
Yes.
way down. And you're very right. It was like the epicenter of all things good and bad a
Mm-hmm.
few hundred years ago, where you'd have the public executions outside and people would be
Yes.
sat in the pub watching it. You'd have people having like family disputes. We would have like some of the kings and of the UK, of England back then, they would go to these different places and there'd be
Yeah.
plots against them. We've had like the gunpowder plot and Guy Fawkes
Mm-hmm.
in some of the pubs, their crew of people. And like you mentioned, like,
And you know what? And it's really interesting that you mentioned this because a lot of people don't realize that back then, if you were a suicide and sometimes criminal, you weren't allowed to be buried in a cemetery. In other words, in hallowed ground. But back then, people really believed this. So you could have somebody that died that was a criminal or a suicide or whatever. For whatever reason, they're not allowed to be buried in. And for them, that's an emotional tie-in because back then, at the very least, you knew that you were going to be buried in a consecrated ground.
yeah.
And the fact that you're not, because back then, I mean, if you were a bad person or immoral, it followed you after death. The good people did not want you buried in the same cemetery as them. So it was like, no, we're going to bury you at the crossroads, or we're going to bury you maybe on the outside of that cemetery, depending on what you did in life. And some people think, well, what's the big deal? But back then, religious beliefs, even if you were, it was very ingrained.
Yeah.
Where not being buried inside, and I'm sure you've heard of ghost stories or events that if once they're discovered and they're reburied inside a cemetery, and some type of blessing or prayers are done over the grave,
Yeah.
that
Everything's all
stops
good.
the
Yeah.
haunting. Back then it was like people don't realize that. In
It
other
was the
words,
Wild
we're
West.
going to punish you even
Yeah.
after death. We're going to punish you if you are a bad person or a murderer or
Yeah.
whatever, because
Yeah.
we're not even going to let you get buried in
Yeah.
consecrated ground. Or if we do, we're going to stick you in that corner way out there by the weeds so that nobody knows. And we're not going to put up a memorial either.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
going to leave you out there because it was even after death, you didn't want to rub elbows with people
No,
murderers,
exactly.
things of that nature.
I get that as well. I get that. It does kind of make sense. It's just
Yeah,
we're a little
but
bit
people
more.
think I wouldn't care, and it's like back then people did care.
Mm-hmm.
They cared very much. I said that's a matter of fact, and I would say even in the UK, why you would have the noblemen that they would be sometimes buried inside the churches
Yep.
or very close to the altar, or the closer you were to the inner church, up the food chain you were, because it was like and if
Yeah.
if you were less rich or less noble, you got put
Yeah.
out
Well,
further out. So yeah, that was a way of keeping the after death.
yeah.
The other day I was going to ask you then, Greg, if you guys are doing that, even though this is in Ireland. I was revisiting that story about, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Leap Castle or Leap, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. This is the one that is in Ireland, and the family, well, now a family bought it in 91, but back around the turn of the century, it was an English family that lived there. But they've had a sighting for many years of an elemental. All right, pretty scary elemental. That I look at that. They found an oubliette. Those dungeons where they were throwing people.
Mhm.
But among one of the signs that to me was like, wow, was this really? Oh, when you read the description of it, it's pretty scary of an elemental spirit that supposedly has been in the air. And there's always been like I don't want to say a controversy, but some people say that it was the Druids who invoked it.
Mhm.
Other people, like there's different theories as to how this thing came to be there
Yeah.
in that castle. And if you ever get to it, I think that's one of the most fascinating things I've heard as far
I'll
as
have a look at that. Yeah.
some of those castles. They're so old. It's like, okay, whoever was
Mhm.
haunting this place is like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And some of those, and I hate to say it, but life was cheap during the times
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
yeah,
It was definitely a lot more brutal, and
yes,
we found that whilst doing a lot of study in the different states in the US, that there was a high proportion of um, hauntings and activity around places of high trauma
hmm
tended to, and like you mentioned, hospitals and sanitariums, prisons
yes,
particularly as well, where everybody was it was very harsh environment back then. It
hmm
wasn't like hospitals nowadays. That's
oh no,
a little bit more friendly towards the patient.
no, they were they
You
were
you're like an
they were
inconvenience. You're
understaffed.
mentally, yeah, you were broken if you were in there. You
Sure.
weren't just mentally um affected. You were treated completely different to like a normal person. So
Well, they were understaffed, and the people that they
uh-huh.
did hire sometimes were horrible people, but they
Yeah,
needed a warm
absolutely.
body.
Mhm.
So that's those abuses behind.
Yeah,
Nobody was paying attention, then that could have been the result. What
yeah,
resulted in a lot of, by the way, very dark
yeah,
hauntings.
yeah,
Not your
definitely.
regular, Uncle so and so, is hanging out in the house because he built it. This
Yeah,
is really, let's face it, some of these people in the prisons, also, they were criminals. These were very
yeah,
dark personalities to begin
yeah,
with.
horrible people. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it's not like, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm sure you've heard of, you know, the last 15 or 20 years that there's a lot of paranormal reality shows, and everybody has their own method, but there's some of them that at the end of the show, which of course they speed it up for entertainment purposes, they kind of tell the family this is the setting where it's okay for the dead to hang out. What do you think about that? Do you think it's okay for the dead to hang out or not? Or do you think it'll go south eventually?
Gosh,
Uh-huh.
I've never even thought about that before.
I think the challenge we've got is that the chances are a lot of these spirits are actually there before the people.
Right.
So,
And
um,
I'm not talking about auntie or grandma or so and so
no,
great grandpa that comes in once in a while, visits and disappears. I'm talking about
mhm,
a ghost that's there all the time, or at least even if it's not seen or felt, it's haunting the
yeah,
premises.
I think it's good. It's a good question. I think personally that if it's a decent paranormal team, a
Hmm
decent paranormal investigation that's going on, and they're trying to understand the reasons why this particular manifestation is happening
Right.
in the property, it can give some kind of closure by understanding, and like you say, it could be so it could be some bones of that particular person are in the wall somewhere,
Right.
and
Right.
they find these bones, they bless the bones, give them a correct burial, and things stop. And I think that if you can do that, I think that's a good thing. But I don't know. It's we get contacted a lot by people saying, "We've got this thing in our house. Can you help me get rid of it?" And me
Okay.
and Ash are in no way any kind
How
of
about you,
expert on this.
Ash? What do you think about that?
Mm.
Do you think you should like get rid of them because it's gonna go, or you should be like one of those live and let live? Like, well, that's not the right thing because they're dead, but
Live and let die.
but we could coexist here.
Yeah, I think that might not be too bad. Because you think about these places, like for example, the hotel. Don't want to bang on about that too much, but other places, like there's certain pubs that are like over 1,000 years old, like Oxford Castle, over 1,000 years old, and they have lots of people going in doing these investigations, and you always get these responses. You always seem to get results. So there's hundreds of people going in and doing this, and it's been going on for decades and decades and decades, potentially hundreds of years. They've had these spirits in there. I think the spirit's probably used to it. It's not like there's been
you again?
Yeah. Oh, this question again.
Yeah.
It's not like you don't really see like escalations. It's not like the activities got worse and worse the more that people are going into that. So I think that whether it's someone's house where a family's living there, or whether it's a building that is open for paranormal investigations where hundreds of people are going in and disturbing these spirits, for lack of a better word. I think, so I think for me, thinking about it just now in that way, I think we got response. I firmly believe we got intelligent responses from something in that building when we were there, and they were happy to do that, as far as I can tell. It's not like we were warned off or they weren't not responding.
I've had investigations where they really, what they wanted to do is identify. They're all like excited, like all giddy. We gotta go. So I was like, oh yeah, you sure do. And and the reason why I ask is I'm from the take no prisoners. I'm gonna say that like historical structures, that you maybe have a docent or somebody. In other words, it's empty unless they're doing a tour. That's different. Some people it doesn't, even though you have people that work there that they have some weird experiences, or maybe like a bigger. In my experience, especially when it's a residential, I've had people tell me, "Oh no, it's even if it's a relative, I tell them this: you need to stop interacting with his spirit. No EVPs, no, and you need to tell them they're dead and ignore them and hope they go away. The living and the dead thing, eventually, and I found so many instances where it goes dark. If something happens, maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, or I've had situations, especially where people have like recently moved, or sometimes it happens out of the blue, where at the beginning, it's what they experience is not really threatening. It's like you said, like a tapping or a squeaking stair or a cold draft, nothing like but then it starts becoming malevolent as it starts going on, because it's almost that vampire thing, like you got to invite it in. And some people, they don't realize, especially if it's an intelligent haunting or even in some cases non-human, where it disguises itself, where it starts off slow. How's that? It starts off slow. So people will say, oh, you know what? Or if they suspect, oh, it was the guy that built the house, I don't want to kick him out. He was an old guy that lived here, and might be, might not be. Or even maybe the guy that built the house was a real son of a gun. And and then down the road, you're like, I always ask everybody, because I looked at some of these shows and it was like, well, nothing's really happened. And especially if you have children, I'm like, these people are crazy. And like I said, I've done so many, and I've had to follow up, or like I tell everybody, most of the time, the family solution is if they can't, they move. They don't even call back to say, hey, come back. I changed my mind. Can you help me get rid of it? Or do you know anybody that you could send over? They're out of there, because it's the easiest way to get out of a situation where all of a sudden, before I was like, oh, do you know we have a ghost? And then, then it starts getting darker, scratching, nightmares, things like that. I've even had people that gets to the point that it attaches to them and it follows them around even when they're outside the house. And I don't know, I'm sure, have you guys spoken to anybody that's happened to them, that it's like carry with you ghosts?
Not so much. with that, I mean, there are very famous UK cases like that. There's
Okay.
a Battersea Poltergeist where it followed the girl to work.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like a seamstress in a shop, and the scissors were being thrown and floating
Really?
around in the area she's working, and that escalated up from nothing.
Really? How old was
Same with
she?
the it all started around puberty.
A poltergeist then, do you think? Do you
Yeah,
think that was
yeah,
displaced kinetic energy?
yeah. And then we've got the Enfield
Yes, of
poltergeist,
course. Yes.
which
The
is a
Enfield
famous one, and that
poltergeist.
started with the girls
But there was
sort
one
of
in
around
particular,
puberty.
though, of the sisters, though, right? That was the
Yeah,
agent.
Janet,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that escalated up from knocks
Yes.
and tappings up to the spirit was talking through Janet like
Mm-hmm.
on camera. It's a fantastic
And see,
documentary to
that's the
watch.
thing that
It's
you hear about
insane.
poltergeists and you hear
Mm,
like what you said, prepubescent or adolescent children,
yep,
usually girls, and
yep,
and it'll go on from a few months throwing things. I mean, and then it stops. But
yep,
then you get other stuff like that. It's like,
yeah,
was she possessed? Like, okay, are we talking poltergeist or was this the
yeah,
entry point for something else? It's like
yeah.
it makes you
It's
wonder. Let me
it's fascinating.
it's she's well now she's grown up. I know that
Mm, yeah,
all of that stopped for them though
yeah, yeah. She
as
goes
they
on
grew older.
TV. I've seen her on TV in the UK a couple of times. Now she's older. She
Hmm.
doesn't like talking about it. She's quite a nervous person anyway.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and
Hmm.
they just wanted nothing to do with it. But they were of the opinion, and it seems to be the same with a lot of poltergeist. You said about people moving. A lot of the poltergeist cases that I've seen, these people go, "Well, I'm not moving. I'm not getting out of my house. It's my house. I'm
Right.
not being driven out by this thing."
Right. Especially
And they,
when
yeah, and it's like it's our family home. We're not moving. We're not going anywhere. And
right.
it
No, and you
becomes a
know
bit
what?
of
And
a
for some
driving force.
persons or some families, it is not feasible financially. They just cannot.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
They've either
Yeah.
bought a place and financial, like they've put in the funds. This is,
They're
whatever. They just
committed.
can't
Yeah.
move.
Yeah.
So they have to like stick it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you because I know this is a very well-known um, case in the UK, which is, excuse me, is Borley Rectory,
Mhm.
which later on I've heard really turned out not to be accurate or truthful.
So, I mean, we haven't really spoken about Borley Rectory. It is a famous UK
Right.
haunting, but to be fair, it's not
Mhm.
even something I've really looked into. I know it
Okay.
is has been a famous case,
Right.
but with me and Ash, we tend to go for the lesser known
Okay.
kind of cases. So we try and bring forward the cases where people haven't necessarily
I love those.
heard about. So like
Yes.
we talked about there's Skinwalker Ranch, obviously in the
Yes.
US,
Hmm.
but there's also a lesser known but equally insane ranch called the Stardust Ranch,
Yes.
which so we done an episode on that rather than Skinwalker.
Well, no,
And
Skinwalker's been,
done
covered
to death.
for,
Yeah, it's been done to death.
yeah.
So we like to find out these, like we say, did people come onto our podcast and talk for the first time? Some of them
Hmm.
first time publicly, and open up about their experiences. And we don't tend to touch the really famous stuff. We've only when there's
Right,
been
because
big
everybody and their
anniversaries.
cousin does a
We
version
talked
of
about
the.
Roswell, not Roswell, Rendlesham Forest in the UK.
Yes.
Sorry, because it hit the 40th anniversary as we were doing the episode. So
Hmm.
we did do that, and Ash went out to Rendlesham Forest and
Oh,
done
you
its
went?
investigation. So yeah, Ash has been out, saw some strange stuff.
But when we did that episode, we didn't talk about the famous incident. We talked about
Mhm.
other incidents that had been happened years
Yeah.
before, other strange stuff that had been happening for thousands of years in that area
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
people don't really talk about.
You know what? That's so interesting because everybody
Mhm.
thinks sometimes, did anything ever happen before
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
in that
There,
area? What
there was
happened?
some.
What was the history of Rendlesham Forest?
Go on, Ash.
Yes, so in terms of the famous the case is the famous US Air Force ran air base at the time. And
Mhm.
over a couple of nights over Christmas 1980, they saw lights in the woods, and everyone knows the Rendlesham story. But in February, that was over Christmas 1980. In February 1980, there was another UFO encounter at the base. And in
Right.
1956, there was a number of UFO incidences at the base, so 24 years earlier. But no one ever talks about these. Now, I'm
Okay.
quite a big UFO guy, but I never knew about these other
Right. I'd
occurrences.
never heard of that.
And these are from like ex. So we spoke to former US Air Force personnel who'd had these
Mhm.
experiences on the base,
Mhm.
but they're obviously not as well known as the like Colonel Holt and Jim Penniston that were part of the famous case. And then the greater Rendlesham Suffolk area itself, there's also the whole place is just thousands of years of supernatural stories and
That is
myths and like
out of that one
wild
spot.
men in like this one probably 100 square mile area. So
Really.
which is quite it's not
How
a
old
big
is the
area.
how far back was that air base established there? What was it, the 50s you said?
I think was it used during the
Or
war?
during World War
I
II?
think it,
Yeah,
I
it
think
may
it
have
was
been.
used during
Yeah,
World War II.
Okay. All
yeah.
right.
That's it. That's outside of the country. So
Okay. Okay.
And
You know what?
during
The
the
other
Cold
day,
War.
I don't know. I'm gonna. You tell me. I was reading up on. I think there's a haunted hangar out there. It's a museum out in the UK where they keep some of the airplanes from World War II. It was really interesting because apparently, of course, from Britain they were flying out to Europe, during
Mhm.
World War II, and some of these planes they would lose them, but apparently in the area that they were at, I can't remember right now, there was a bog very close by where sometimes years obviously later they've actually dug up or found some of these
Yeah.
planes with the pilots inside of them, and sometimes they think that perhaps this is the tie-in
Well,
to some of
yeah.
the weird stuff going on inside these hangars that they've turned into museums.
Yeah. We talked recently about whether or not a location is haunted because of the location,
Mhm.
the earth surrounding it, or the objects that are actually in it. So that
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
potentially ties in with that. So
Well, think about it. Let's say in these planes,
mm,
talk about a high emotional state for these pilots. You're going out
mm,
to do something that you might not come back from. All right. And
yeah,
this is each and every time you go out. So talk about a high emotional state surrounding an object, which
mhm,
is what we're talking about. Absolutely. Absolutely. That I imagine coming around those things is going to be like, what? Um,
be horrific. Yeah.
what have you ever had anything follow you guys home?
Nope. Not that I'm aware of.
Oh no, you would know. I sometimes. How about you, Ash? Because I'm looking at him. He's thinking about something.
So I wouldn't say followed me home, but I moved into this apartment a couple of years ago, and this building's over 200 years old, and we've had some experiences in this building that I'm in my
Right?
apartment. I've had a couple, so I think there's something in this building
Really?
that's probably been here for probably well over 100 years.
Okay.
That's just me. I try to do research in the building, trying to find out who lived there previously and what it
Mm-hmm.
used to be, because it's apartments now, but it used to be a big, massive house with like grounds and
Okay.
what I believe are servants' quarters in the basement.
Oh, yeah. If it's 100 years old, what was it? Do you think they converted it from was it like a house, and
Yeah, I
then they?
think, yeah.
Okay.
Then I think in the 70s it converted into flats. That's what I've been trying to find out, like the
Mm-hmm.
history. It's
Mm-hmm.
been a bit hard to find for paying money and everything to try and find out the records and stuff, but it doesn't seem to tell me much. But yeah, we've had a couple of occurrences of things, just weird things happening in the apartment and in the basement of the building, which
You
is a
know
couple
what?
of
What
floors.
is it about cellars and basements? Whenever you
This
hear of a
basement's
haunting,
weird.
it's dark. You'll hear, yeah, the one on the stairs in the hallway, but whenever you go down to the basement or the cellar, it turns very weird and very dark. I don't know what it is about. Whenever somebody says that, it's like, oh, one of those.
All good horror films start in a basement,
Yeah, I
don't
know.
they?
No,
So
but no, really, if you read about enough of these, and it's really funny because you'll have some family that will say, well, I have this encounter with these experiences up here, let's say in the rest of the house. But when I go downstairs to do my laundry or one of those things, all of a sudden it becomes darker, or they feel like oppressive, or that I'm being watched kind of feeling. And it's always has to do with something that's subterranean.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is, but I've seen
Yeah,
I've
it's
seen that
very
common denominator.
It's very unusual in the UK to have a basement. Not many places have basements. So I've been to Ashes, and we've done investigations in the basement
Okay.
to check it out. We've had some weird experiences.
What have you felt, Ash? What is is it just a creepy feeling, or what is it?
So the main one that's happened in the apartment itself, because I'm on the first floor, which would be second floor for you guys. And where I was in the bathroom, no one else in the apartment, and then someone tried to get in the bathroom door, like
Really?
proper shut the door. I absolutely
Oh my
shut myself.
God!
I was like, let me finish. And I was like, what is happening?
You know what? You know what? Of all the places I think of a haunting, that's got to be the worst. But anyway, keep going.
There's other cases because where my apartment is, it's quite long, and the lounge where I am now is at one end, and the kitchen's at the far side. And there's no building, and the corridor is really creaky, and you know where it creaks, and you get used to the footsteps. You know where someone's walking. So I was in the kitchen, and I heard what I thought was my partner walking from the lounge to the kitchen.
Okay.
I turned around thinking, because I'd heard the footsteps, I heard the creaking, clear as day, come into the kitchen. Turn around, nobody's there. Shout at my partner, he's still in the lounge, and it moved. But I had heard someone 100% walk down the corridor to the kitchen. So I've only been in the basement doing an investigation. The best one we've had really is we were recording for Facebook for the podcast, and we were just wrapping up, and something was thrown at the wall just next to us, and we got it on camera. Thankfully, because we were still recording.
Really?
And you just hear a rock or something, but hit the wall with force next to us, like literally 2 meters at most away from us.
Okay.
And then we both react to it. We both what the F was that? But there was nothing.
So it's not just a creepy feeling. That's something tangible that you're describing.
Yeah, definitely. And it was just lucky. Like I said, we were just doing the last little bit to say like thanks for watching or whatever, and
that's weird.
Hadn't pressed stop, and we both just looked round.
Huh. Yeah, you know what? Weird. It's I've heard of people that they've had manifestations, and one of them is they hear the toilet flushing. And I'm thinking to myself, you're a ghost. The only thing I can think of is when you were around, they didn't have indoor plumbing, so you just gotta go over there. Oh, that guy, that guy. How does that work? Because I never was like indoor, flushing toilet, but I've heard that many times as a manifestation of weird stuff. People will say, besides the water faucet being turned on, they'll do that flushing toilet in front. It's like, okay, that fascination. It's almost like a child goes and flushes a toilet because they're so it's almost like if this is an adult. We didn't have this back when I was around. Why didn't we? But yeah, the bathroom has got to be the I remember one time I was in I went to a meeting up in Vermont. It was a very old it was kind of old. And it was out in the woods, and Vermont, is very wooded. And I remember that this had never happened to me. I was taking a shower, and I could swear that I had somebody standing on the other side of the shower curtain. I must have spent the entire time looking around these shower, because it was like, this is really weird. Where it was that and
quite vulnerable in a shower as well.
Right, of course. But I'm saying I was thinking of other things, and it was like, for a minute, I even thought, did somebody come into the bathroom? And I didn't realize it. And I, like somebody made it. You just look, and it's not because you've heard it's difficult to explain, not per se because you've heard a noise, but you feel like there's somebody standing on the other side of the shower curtain.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, nobody there. I was like, okay. And then a little while later, I was like, oh my God, okay, this is not my imagination. But yeah, that for some reason, and I think I would have a heart attack if I felt somebody touch me in the shower. I've heard of people having that experience, and I'd be like, yeah, I'd be screaming so loud.
Might give a little smile.
No, man, I'm telling you, some of those things, it's like you hear some of the experiences people have. Either that or, well, of course, you hear of people that are sleeping and they'll feel like the weight on the mattress
Mm.
or things
Mm,
along those,
yeah, that's
that would be,
creepy. That's
you
super
know,
creepy.
that kind of weight, or even and
Yeah.
many years ago, I used to work with a girl, and it's a long story, but part of the haunting eventually because it ramped up, and she had bought a townhouse with a fiance. They broke up, but she stayed with it, and it was a 2-story townhouse, and she stayed living alone there. And she had gone through all these. It had ramped up as far as started like with whispering in the ear. Like when you're waking up, that you hear like somebody whispering, but you wake up and you're like thinking, oh, I was in the dream state. That's how it started. But bottom line, and she said that she had a dog who would. He says never had a problem. It was a young dog, and all of a sudden he would just sit at the bottom of the steps of the stairs going to the second floor where the bedrooms were and just bark and bark and bark. She was like going crazy because she didn't want to put him out in the yard, but she was like, "What is wrong with you?" So she says that whispering in the ear kind of, and a couple of times she says she almost felt like that weight thing, but when you're in and out of sleep and you're really not sure, is it am I
Mm.
dreaming? Am I, but she says that one day, by this time I remember she told me, she goes, Marlene, I really thought I was going crazy. I was afraid to tell my mom and my sister because I was thinking, I'm going crazy and they're going to think I'm going crazy. But she says that one night she's asleep and she says, and I guess I was so nervous, when you become like a light sleeper, even though you're not a light sleeper. She goes, I felt somebody lie down next to me and she felt over and she felt somebody.
Wow.
Well,
And she says, she goes, ran, she grabbed the dog, she grabbed couple of her things, sped off to her married sister's house, and she goes, I made her make, I laid down like on her side of the bed, like blankets, and I made her leave the light on because there was no
well,
way. And she says she spent like a week at night
yeah.
at her sister's house, and she says, and she would come with me during the daytime, pick up some clothes, and then and back. And
Well,
there was a lot to that story as to what the origins were, how she resolved it. But to me, when she described I said that's got to be the most horrible. She says she goes,
Mm.
so many times I'd felt that, but it was like, and then she goes, but when I put my hand out and I actually felt somebody there next to me,
that's weird.
she was like, she says that she just like, and she says that's when she told her mother and her sister and everything and about what she had been experiencing. And as a matter of fact, during this, she had told me says I would be at the kitchen sink washing dishes, and then I had a window, and she goes, and I kept feeling like this was at the very beginning. I would feel like somebody was watching me, and I'd turn around, and then she goes, I'm alone in the house with the dog, and she'd be turning around, and there's nobody there, nothing there, nothing there. She says it got to the point though that she started getting that same feeling of being watched even when she left the house. All right. And later on, she found out what the origins of it was. But as far as that vulnerable moment, which is you're in the shower, the
Hmm.
bathroom, or sleeping, that's got to be the worst, I think.
Yeah, it's like a proper personal invasion at that point, isn't it?
Yes, of course. Or if or when you don't expect it, because when you're ghost hunting,
Yeah,
you're ready for it, kind of,
you're hoping
maybe.
for it, really, aren't you?
Yeah, there was a young lady. This was because I used to work with a research foundation here in Florida. I was talking to one of it was, some of these groups have dissolved, and he told me he had this young lady had come into the team, and they went to this very old museum after hours, of course. And it was like a 2-story museum, and they were just like what you said. Everybody's like within line of sight and just taking base readings and temperatures and all that. This girl, she's all like, oh, she's on a ghost hunt. Something or somebody tapped her hard on the shoulder. She says it was unmistakable. She was tapped on the. She got hysterical. They had to like escort her out of the museum,
Oh,
and they had to end it because she totally lost it. And my point being that sometimes people get into this thinking they're going to have this great experience, and then all of a sudden, when it actually happens,
Yeah.
there's like, you know what I mean? This is for real, yeah. And it was just that. And the guy says, I was watching her. She was like in another room, but I could see through the doorway. There was nothing. She didn't brush up against anything or anything like that, but she distinctly felt a very hard tap on her shoulder. And that did it for her. That was the end of her ghost hunting days.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So let me ask you, are you guys doing anything for Halloween coming up? No, I brought that up at the beginning.
Wow. We're just on the hottest day of the year so far in the UK. Halloween's not
Is that a big deal over there?
For September it is. It's the hottest ever, like September.
Yeah.
A minute.
Halloween though is a bit, it is and it isn't.
Well, it's become very commercialized, as I know.
Oh yeah,
it's not like when you look at like American TV shows or what America does for Halloween, it just seems tenfold.
Wow.
What you get in the UK, it's not quite as big.
Let me tell you something. I'm upset because usually, we go down into like, you go into October, November, December. We're talking, well, here at least in the States, you've got Halloween end of October, then November. You've got Thanksgiving, and then of course the holidays, Christmas, New Year's. It's like the home stretch of the year. And my last show, I was like telling my audience, I'm upset. I'm going into all these stores and they've got all this Halloween stuff, and it's like, come stop. Like it's hot. It's you always think of the autumn or the fall time for Halloween, and it's become very commercialized.
We kind of almost miss Halloween in this country. It goes straight from the summer. I went into like one of the supermarkets today.
Right.
They've got the selection boxes, of Christmas selection boxes.
Oh my God, you're kidding.
And I'm just like,
yeah, everywhere's Christmas already.
Everywhere's Christmas. So where I work, they're organising the Christmas meal and like party. I'm like,
wait a minute, right?
What I said, they sent it last week. I said it's August.
Exactly.
I said I'm not even prepared to think about Christmas until at least October.
Exactly.
Like, no, we need to get booked up. I'm like, it's August. There's no such thing as Christmas in August.
Right. Well, and that's and that's the angle that sometimes that I find that how can I say, at least for me, these holidays or these events, there's a certain thing of anticipation of enjoying the build-up, but not when it's 4 months in advance and things of this nature. And over here, right before they took all the gardening and barbecue and summer stuff, and they hit them. It was like, what happened to the barbecue stuff? It's all gone.
Yeah.
And
so in terms of Halloween, I don't know. We might do something, I suppose.
It's well, okay. Let's go darker. Well, some people there's this commercialized with the pumpkin but Samhain, which supposedly was part of pagan celebration for the new year, as far as this was, and of course it's a different climate, but it would be like before the beginning of winter kind of thing. And they from what I understand, there was a lot of unusual things that would happen, including in some cases human sacrifice as part of those celebrations. There's a darker aspect when you go into pagan times.
So missing out Halloween, we go straight to Christmas. So we've done it before where we'll do like a whole episode of like Christmas ghost stories.
Yes, exactly.
But not like Scrooged. We'll be like, we'll talk about real ghost.
You're not going to do like M.R. James? Is that what you're saying?
So
like all these like classic ghost guys?
No. We're like, if it's not true, obviously we don't know whether some of these are true. That's when it gets onto our episodes. So there's like there's a hall, a ruins near where I live, and it turned out that one of our first Christmas episode that we talked about one of the deaths at this particular ruins where I live. So that made a Christmas one. We've talked loads about Christmas killings and hauntings and stuff. So,
it's that thing about the ghost stories.
And
there's a lot of.
Yeah, so we Halloween. I don't know what we'll do for Halloween.
Well, and what I really like about these ghost stories is that they're stories, whether they're true or not.
Yeah,
Some stories is like you really don't. There's no resolution. It's not like the investigation where you go and then somebody comes and blesses the house and it's over. It's like the ghost stories, some experience that a person has.
they
Sometimes they
become an
know what the
urban
origins
legend.
are,
Yeah,
and
it sort of
sometimes they just had
becomes,
that
doesn't it?
experience and
Yeah,
that was it, and they move
yeah.
on or whatever.
hmm
Uh,
hmm
or they had that one moment where they came across something that it was like, wow, what was that? Uh,
Yeah,
or like
absolutely.
what the thing that you were talking about when you went to your friend's house
hmm
as a child,
Yeah,
and then you're
yeah,
here like they're getting the house blessed, and
oh,
you're
yeah.
like, those stairs are like. Let me ask you, do you think that the way you felt about the stairs was your imagination, or do you think
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was okay? It
I
was
just
strictly your
think I was
imagination.
freaked out when I was
Okay,
little because back then, like I said, there's no sort of point of reference in the
right.
80s. If you didn't see it on on the TV, not even on video at
Hmm.
that point, on TV,
Yeah.
where in the UK there was like 3 channels in the 80s. We had 3 TV channels and that was it.
Right.
So if it wasn't on TV or you couldn't
Hmm.
get it in a book,
Hmm.
that was it. There was no. So hence why I used to watch Arthur C. Clarke's World of Strange World of Mysteries,
Right.
and that used to freak me out because I couldn't. I just had to accept this account and experience what was going on. Whereas now, like the internet, you can go on.
Oh, of
Okay,
course.
spontaneous human combustion. We've done an
Exactly.
episode on that, so you can Google it and you go, oh, actually, people with spontaneous human combustion. It used to frighten me, the fact that I
And
think
you
I
think
could
of it.
go up in flames for no
Uh-huh.
reason. It's quite a dark.
Let me ask you now that you say that, what did you find? Was there something that they all had in common, these people that have ignited?
Well, some people actually claim to have seen like fireballs going through the glass into the house where the people were. So
Really?
there was almost like an external source of combustion, but there
Because you
was
always hear
case.
like sometimes the furniture and everything around them is
Mm.
not
Yeah,
burnt.
everything's all pretty. There might be a leg left or an arm
Mm-hmm.
or something like that, and there was one case, and the woman was seen at say 9:30 at night, and I think it was like 10 or 15 minutes later, somebody had seen the fire, and they'd gone, and all of her remains were gone except for like her feet or whatever. And they're like, there's literally no way, even cremating a body, that you could do it in like 5-10 minutes.
Right. Yes, I've heard that people,
Yeah.
when the crematoriums, they say you have to leave a body in there X amount of time at a very,
hmm
very high
Yeah.
heat
Yeah. It's not easy
to.
to do.
No,
Not
it's
easy
not.
to.
It's not. As a
So,
matter of
and
fact, a lot of criminals that have tried to burn their
mm,
victims,
yeah.
they get caught because they thinking that they can get rid of the body easily by burning it, especially
hmm
the bone, and they find out they can't.
Yeah, it's really it's I think it's one of the hardest things to do to a human body, I think, is burn it.
I think one of the main causes they say cause it is alcohol, either inside the body or maybe on the
Really.
clothing, and the smoking.
Mhm.
So somehow,
But
like the
still.
alcohol has ignited, and back in them, like, a lot of them are from quite a long time ago. And today, with a lot of the materials that we use to build furniture, would go up fast. So when a fire starts nowadays, it spreads fast in the house. Whereas back
Hmm.
in, say, the 50s and 60s, because the material was different, it would stay contained more. So like the chair might set itself on fire, but then it
Exactly.
would burn out. It wouldn't spread as easy as it does today. So whether that's obviously that's one of the theories that people put towards it's alcohol in the body. I mean, it has to be a lot. I mean, it must have to be a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
Between
Right.
nitrogen
It's
and
like we,
cigarette or
was
something.
this person like an alcoholic that they're like,
Yeah.
that how,
Mhm.
I don't know if you've ever been around somebody that drinks so much that you can smell it through the pores of their skin. Like you
Mhm.
can be like,
Mhm.
oh my God, you smell like a beer
Yeah.
or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, that they just like ignited.
Yeah.
That's a
So
that'll.
so who know there was no real resolution to
Hmm.
like a final sort of explanation that covers every single one. So
What's what would make somebody burst into flame? That's
Well,
very
exactly.
interesting.
Why would somebody burst into flames? And that in itself is scary. That
It's
I
a
could just sit
curse.
here.
It's a curse. No, I'm only kidding.
It could be. It could
Somebody
be.
had
It's
a voodoo doll.
karma coming back.
Yeah, but as a matter of fact, I'm going to go back real quick to that thing of Halloween.
Yep.
Down in South Florida, we have a lot of islanders, and that there's the African-based religions. That's very big in South Florida.
Hmm.
And I remember, like, before I moved up here, I still have chickens, and I remember I had too many roosters, and I had put them up for sale. And this was the eve of Halloween, and out of the blue, I get this young man calls me and wants to buy all 3 of the ones that I had for sale. And I
Oh,
told him nope. And because something told me, you know what? You're gonna do this. You're gonna use these things in some type of ritual or something. It's like, no, I'm not selling my roosters to you. I'm going crazy with my roosters, but it was so weird that the timing, and it was like in the evening, and usually people don't call you and say, hey, let me buy you your 3 roosters. I was like, no, 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 no. Yeah, out there you see a lot of unusual things
yeah, I can imagine.
because of it's a different way of looking at stuff, and the timing, and of course that right after Halloween is what they call All Saints Day or All Souls Day and things like
Mhm.
that, and in
Yeah,
Mexican they have the Dia de los Muertos, which is where people
they're
go
the
to the
dead. Yeah,
cemeteries, and
yeah,
so yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that traditions that some people follow it, some people forget, and they don't do that anymore.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
so for my podcast, I'm going to put a link to in the credits of the show. But for the podcast listeners, what is your website? And tell me about your show, your podcast.
So we are Pursuit of the Paranormal podcast. Our website is pursuitoftheparanormal.co.uk. We've got a link tree. I don't know if anybody.
Yes,
Yeah,
I just found out about Linktree. Yeah.
So cool. So we're at
Yes.
Linktree/ Pursuit of the Paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
And people can get the links to all of the podcast episodes. We're nearly 300 episodes in.
Wow.
We've done on the website, you've got all of the specials we've done. We've done the Paranormal United States, where we've been around all the different states in America talking about from A to Z or A to Z, talking around all the different hauntings and weird stuff that has happened in each state. And if you go on Amazon,
yes,
you
your
can
book
also buy our book, which we've just launched, which is, there we go.
There we go. Yes, I saw that
video.
Paranormal. And what is that? Does that include each state, or were you able to cover all the states? Okay.
So we've got 50 different chapters,
Okay.
covering off every single state from starting at A right the way through. And on Linktree, the website, that can get all the information.
Everything, for all your, whether it's the Amazon or social platform or anything like that. And what is it? Once a week you do the podcast?
Twice.
Okay, twice. Okay.
Yeah. So we have been up to 4 episodes at one point, but that's, as you will know, that's quite a.
Oh yes, that's
quite a mission.
Yes, that'll put.
So we dropped that down to 2. So, we do UFO episodes, we do ghost episodes, we do cryptid episodes, we do like a monthly roundtable we get UFO podcasts on to come and talk about certain subjects. Same with the paranormal, we'll get paranormal podcasts on, and we have a bit more of a wider discussion around locations and equipment rather than specifics. So we're Pursuit of the Paranormal on all the social medias, basically.
All the major platforms and stuff.
And then Ash's UFO side is ufoidentified.co.uk, where you can see the UK's largest database.
I was going to ask you, what is it? People notify you of sightings and you keep track of them, or what is that?
So we've been going since 2020, and we have a report form on there. So when someone sees a UFO, they can report it to us. If they're local to us, so I'm based in the northwest of England, Manchester, Liverpool, that type of area. And when we get local sightings towards, we'll go out and investigate them. We'll go and meet the witness. We go to the location, and we'll complete a full investigation. We do get reports from all over the UK, some international, and the database is basically solar reports, but I also gather from other databases. So we use the MUFON database, Newfork, all the different databases. We scour local and national media for anyone reporting things to newspapers. We contact all the police forces, the military.
Really?
We go through social media groups, and I basically collate all these sightings into just a database, and that's become the biggest, basically the biggest
Of course,
database because
and that's exactly where you find patterns.
Yeah, that's the main reason, because we found some really, really unusual stuff. Which because there's so many different places to report stuff, or people don't know how to report it at all. Then we had a case where there was 5 triangle sightings in a 16-hour period in the UK. They've all been reported to 5 different databases. So that would never been picked up because I've been doing this work, collecting all these sightings. I spotted that pattern, I spotted this trend, and then we can do full investigations because we can link these sightings together, whereas it wasn't been done. No one's doing this work in the UK.
Right. It's basically you're harvesting all that information and you're making it, and that's what I was telling you about that gentleman Stan Gordon out in Pennsylvania. He's just been doing it, but that's how he started realizing there's patterns here.
Yeah,
because he was getting fed all this information of people, and what's really funny is these are sources that don't know each other. It's not like they got together and decided to make a report. They're totally separate, and especially when, like you said, in that 16-hour period where you have people describing the same thing, it's like, okay, what are the chances of that?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm telling you, no, there's a lot of, and let me ask you, because you just said you guys are out in Manchester, right?
I am, yes.
You're in Manchester. I'm sorry, I tried to put you in Manchester.
No way.
He's from
oh
down
my
south.
God! Oh, Ash,
There's a north-south divide in the UK.
Really? Let me ask you: is it true that I've heard that Manchester has a reputation that once upon a time there was a lot of witchcraft out there?
Yeah, well, the sort of Lancashire, Manchester area, the Pendle Hill is not too far from me, the Pendle Witch Trials. And then further up north a little bit, you got Lancaster Castle, where some of the witches were hung. And there's quite a bit of witch history.
You ever heard of that? Well, and of course, one thing is what you hear, and another thing is reality. That even though it had that historical, but even afterwards, that there's still a lot of witches out there in Manchester. It's not like once upon a time. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, there's lots of modern, modern witch, white witch, people that practice witchcraft and occult and stuff. There's a lot of places you can go where you can talk to people or meet people that.
Oh no! Obviously now it's more open. It's not like you're going to get burned in the stake, and there's a whole different theory as far as.
I don't know. You haven't been to Manchester. It's quite possible.
Oh, see, it's like it sounds like you cannot get Greg into Manchester for anything in the world. Forget it.
I love it up there. I go up and see Ash more now than we have done, and a lot of the paranormal and UFO related stuff is towards the north of it seems to be sort of north of the country, so that's where I spend a lot of time. We've just been out about this time last Friday.
Yeah, because you have battlefields also out there, right?
Oh yeah. So we've been out filming for a program, one of the forests, and we've done some CE5 UFO calling out, and got that filmed ready for a program that's coming out in a couple of weeks. So yeah,
So you're going to post all of this up on your website as far as anybody following up, wanting to find out about not only podcasts, but if you're going to be.
Yeah,
right.
We also do, anybody who's in the UK, Ash and his team do a UFO conference every year, and that's on October the 15th in Manchester. Get it on our website and everything, still tickets. Little put
and
there.
What is this?
There we
Is
go.
this like a one-day or a weekend conference or what?
So one day this year.
Okay.
Yeah, we started it for the first time in 2021. We sold out that one. We sold out last year, and
Oh,
we've got a bit bigger this year, and we've only got limited tickets left, so it's been
Yeah.
You know what?
a
People
great
like to
day.
hang out with other people that don't give them that weird look, like you saw
It was
UFO.
amazing last year. It
It's
was
like, man,
amazing.
I get you. Did you? Let me tell you my story. People like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
People like
100%,
that.
100%.
Of course, it's
Definitely.
like, man, I don't feel like the odd man out. Again,
Exactly.
gentlemen, it has been absolutely wonderful to speak to you, and I want to wish you the best
Brilliant.
of luck.
Thank you.
And I'll be contacting you. You can call me back, especially after your UFO conference.
Yeah.
And you can tell me
Yeah.
stories about, stuff that people sometimes will not tell you. Let's say on a podcast, but we'll tell you in person. Oh,
Mhm.
by the way, let me tell you this story, and you're the only one that knows about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So till
No,
next
that's
time,
cool.
thank you.
Love
It has
that.
been wonderful to speak to you, and I want to wish you the best of luck. Once you're, well, today is Thursday. Do you do anything during the weekend as far as the shows, or is it strictly the weekdays?
Tuesday we release an episode.
Okay.
Like Monday night into Tuesday midnight in the
Okay.
UK, and then usually either Thursday,
Saturday.
Friday, or Saturday. Yeah, depending on how
On
organised we
what's
are.
going on with you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Again, thank you so much, and I want to wish you the best of luck on everything.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you.
care. Bye bye.
See you soon.
Likewise. Bye bye. I love them. They were great. It's like, hey, I want to cover all the haunted places that I've heard of in the UK. And of course, Marlene geographically has no idea. Like, yeah, see, I was trying to make them live in the same place, like Manchester. It's like, it's like Marlene, it's a whole country. Because you hear of all these places. I was even trying to get information on a castle in Ireland. Hello. But yeah, but I'm glad something that they pointed out, which is that they go and follow up on places that are not the ones you hear everybody and their second cousin has done the story on. This is new places that you haven't heard of about. So after a while, it's like, I could tell you what the haunting's about, and I could tell you what the name of the ghost is, and this is what happened. It's like, okay. And this is coming from somebody that, well, let's put it this way. Used to watch, I used to watch all of the paranormal shows. And lately, some of them become so repetitive, so formulaic that it's like, why am I seeing this? This is nothing. This is, it's almost like you feel like they've kept these shows on for people that are like a little, that now they're interested in it. So basically, it's a new audience because it's like, and you know what? And personally, I like the investigations when there's a historical aspect to it, or they do how's this? They do historical research on it, one way or the other. All right. To either say, there was here or there was nothing here, nothing ever happened, as far as what could be the catalyst or the source of whatever's going on there, you know. But yeah, no, some of these shows, it's like, no, I can't see this anymore because I could just about say exactly I can wonder what this is about. I can tell what's going to happen next. Um, so yeah, as a matter of fact, the last show I saw, which is new, which is pretty neat. I liked it. It's UFO Cowboys. Let me tell you something. That's pretty neat. Um, it's I understand the setup of it, but I like the people that they've got. It's like obviously cowboys, and they're UFO hunters at the same time. But they got a group of guys, of men that are pretty. I like them. They're interesting. It's an interesting format. This is the first season. It's just out. UFO Cowboys. I liked it. Sometimes you look at some of these shows, and you're going to the first episode, and you're like, oh no, no, oh no, no. There was one. What was it? It's been maybe 3 or 4 years, 5 years. I don't know. It was a while back. I think if I remember correctly, the name was Ghost Bait or something like that. It was short lived, so I think I was not the only one that was saying this is not a. And where basically you had a team going in, let's say to a family or person that said they had some type of paranormal event going on in their house, and they would get for lack of a better word, the target person, the person that was being targeted. And they would put a sack over their head and sit them there, like basically had make them endure I guess a paranormal experience. It was like, okay, what is this? Ghost bait, S&M. It was very masochistic. Like, I understand that there's a scare factor in there, but not when you put a sack over somebody's head and make them experience maybe a very scary. And you have to understand, for some people, that you look at it and you go, man, that's not a big deal. But if you've had somebody who's been living in a house or been living where they've been experiencing paranormal events or what they think is paranormal events, you become hyper vigilant. You're amped up because you're thinking every little noise, um, every little thing is paranormal. So you get this person that basically any little thing is going to set them off. And to me, it looked like basically it was just like a form of torture. It was like, this is not an interesting show. I don't see the entertainment value in it. And I guess other people thought the same thing because it was short-lived. But anyway, yeah, there's some shows that I look like I'll go through the first episode. If I make it through the first one, it's like, nope, not for me. But that UFO Cowboys is pretty cool. I like that. I really like that. And again, I'm gonna go back touching briefly on this UFO thing because before ufologists were I don't want to say it was a conspiracy theory thing, but it was like, oh, ufologists, the abductees, blah blah blah. All of a sudden in the government it's like taken off. All these people in the government are having hearings, and people that belong to the CIA now are saying they're contactees. And it's like, what? That's weird. That's weird. I mean, let's face it, even from Roswell, the government has always been the one that's taken the trouble to make people think, what is it, a weather balloon, or this or that, discredit people if they had any type of veracity. And all of a sudden they're jumping on board. This is weird. I don't know. Maybe that's just a cynic in me, but it's like, and that's another thing. They have these hearings, and why don't they bring in all these people from across, let's go with the United States, across the United States who have had some type of UFO sighting or encounter, or whatever the case. And I'm saying they've got so many people to pick from that you can exclude the mentally ill, you can exclude the liars, you can exclude the people that are like that they're wishy-washy in their descriptions. I mean, there's so many people that you could bring in and say if you wanted to bring them to Congress or anything and testify about their experiences, it's like, why are you getting government officials? Why don't you get the ordinary person who experienced or saw something that is very credible? There's a gazillion of them. No, they don't bring those people in. That's another thing. I'm like, yeah, what's up with this? All of a sudden this UFO thing, and uh tells me like, and I wonder what my dogs are barking at, for the love of Mike. I don't know. I'm gonna have to go out there with the enforcer. But yeah, I hope you guys like this show. I will be doing, speaking of Halloween, I will be doing a Halloween live stream this year again. Like, this is gonna be my third year with my wingman Henry, and we'll do the same format. And we'll talk about. Let me see what angle we'll do with Halloween. Some Halloween stories, true life, weird stuff about Halloween. And you know what? It's really funny because we live in this thing that I forget that the Halloween is really an American thing. And in the UK, I'm like, hey, aren't you guys doing for Halloween? It's like, right, doesn't everybody celebrate Halloween? It's like, Marlene, hello. It's an American thing. Yeah, I'm sure it's become commercialized, but and as far as ghost stories, is absolutely right. It was how can I tell you, that Christmas thing that you always heard about? Well, let's tell, ghost stories around the fireplace when it's cold and snowing and all that, or cold or whatever, and foggy out in the UK. But yeah, that was Marlene having a mental hiccup, for lack of a better word, about that. Yeah, Marlene, not everybody celebrates everything, So yeah, I got to follow up with them. I got to follow up on their podcast. Like I said, I'm gonna have a link to their website, especially the website that's got all those reports. That's another thing, and that's great. It's like a clearinghouse of UFO reports. That's very good so people can say, hey, this person did. Hey, I did. There are other people that saw this in this area around the same time I saw that. That's very interesting. So don't forget, sign up for my Substack newsletter. Go to mppellicer.com, miamighostchronicles.com. Again, all my announcements are going to be on the newsletter. Plus, I have links to old shows, links to podcast versions. But you can also find links to everything on the website. And of course, any new books, like I said, if I have giveaways, usually I announce them on the newsletter. Anything of interest, like the last time I think I put out the newsletter asking for suggestions for the title of my book. That was one of those things that every time I thought of something, I was like, that's a horrible title. That sounds so ugh. Sometimes it's good to brainstorm with other people. So until next time, guys, thank you for coming back every week and spending this time with me. Again, I have some great guests lined up, new ones like Greg and Ash, and then other people coming back. So till next time, take care.